The night over the alien empire pressed down like a shroud, heavy and suffocating. The skies carried no sound except the slow drift of twin moons that hung above the Queen's fortress palace. Their pale radiance slipped over the black towers, highlighting battlements carved from obsidian stone, as if the very cliffs had risen into spires. The vast complex brooded in silence. Along its walls, guards paced in practiced rhythm, armored steps echoing against the stone. Spears and curved blades caught the moonlight, glimmering like watchful eyes. None among them dared break formation, for every soldier knew that this night was not theirs. It belonged to their queen. She was a sovereign feared not just across her own empire, but across the stars. A warrior queen who had stood on battlefields where entire fleets crumbled. A ruler whose voice could silence disputes with a single word. The mere whisper of her anger had crushed rebellions before they could ignite. Yet within her iron soul lay two fragile sparks, her daughters. The princesses, small and bright, were her hidden treasure, the only beings able to coax laughter from her stern lips. That evening, before duty reclaimed her, she had watched over them. Within their chamber, the queen had leaned down, her breath warm as she whispered a rare blessing. She brushed strands of hair from their foreheads, listening as their breathing slowed and softened into sleep. For a fleeting hour, she allowed herself to forget war councils, maps, and treaties. In their presence, her storms eased. When she rose, leaving them under the guardianship of her most loyal handmaidens, her heart carried a rare peace. But peace is always fleeting. As hours bled away, shadows lengthened across corridors. The palace grew stiller, its silence deepening into unease. Then, somewhere in the chamber of the princesses, that stillness cracked. The handmaidens opened the door, expecting the steady rhythm of children's breaths. Instead, they found empty beds. Sheets of silk lay tangled and abandoned. The balcony doors were ajar, letting in a sharp, cold wind that smelled of night and distance. The room carried no cry, no sign of struggle, only absence. The alarm spread like wildfire. Bells clanged from towers. Horns echoed across the city below. Guards flooded the hallways, shouting commands, racing into the grounds beyond the palace walls. Panic turned the handmaidens pale as they stammered explanations, trembling under the weight of what they had witnessed. The queen arrived like a storm. Moonlight framed her figure in the doorway, her presence larger than the chamber itself. Her gaze swept across the room, burning with disbelief. "Where are my daughters?" Her voice thundered, reverberating through stone. Soldiers knelt instantly, unable to meet her eyes. She herself tore through the covers, searched beneath the blankets, even crouched to peer into shadows, as though somehow her girls might be hiding there. Only cold emptiness answered her hands. Inside her chest, fear rose like a tide, but pride twisted it into rage. Her roar ripped through the palace. "Search everything! Every hall, every chamber, every shadow! Bring me my children!" Her command leapt beyond walls. Soldiers poured into forests, riversides, and villages. Messengers galloped into the night. Whispers spread across the city's streets, carrying with them 1,000 theories. Some spoke of enemies of the throne, foreign agents, smugglers bold enough to attempt the unthinkable. Others blamed mountain rebels, long thought crushed. Yet the most persistent rumor fixed upon one word: human. Someone had seen a human wanderer near the gates earlier that day. Suspicion took root instantly. The queen's fury hardened into resolve. She would not believe her daughters had simply walked into the night. Someone had dared to steal them, and if that someone was indeed human, then vengeance would not stop until the stars themselves dimmed. Through the palace she stormed, her tall frame moving like the shadow of a thundercloud. Her soldiers followed but kept distance, for they feared the fire in her every step. Each empty chamber tore deeper into her heart, each silence louder than any scream. In the council hall, advisors bent low, voices trembling as they offered theories. Perhaps smugglers, perhaps rebels, perhaps the human. Her patience snapped. With a single blow of her clawed hand, she shattered the heavy stone table into fragments. "I will tear this world apart if I must." "They will be found." Her vow thundered across the chamber, rattling torches in their sconces. Night thickened. The moon slipped lower toward the horizon, yet the search returned nothing. Forest paths, riverbanks, and villages yielded no trace. The people shuttered windows, whispering prayers into the darkness, terrified that her wrath might burn through innocent homes. At last, The queen stood upon the highest balcony, wind clawing at her hair and cloak. Below her empire sprawled vast and shadowed. Yet her eyes were not on her lands. They searched the horizon, fierce and frantic. Somewhere beyond reach, her daughters were cold and alone. Fear, a stranger to her warrior's heart, gnawed at her now, and still far from her sight. Another story had already taken root. In the endless forest beyond the palace, crystal-barked trees rose like pillars, their translucent trunks glowing faintly in the moonlight. Alien fireflies drifted in swarms, like fragments of constellations broken loose from the sky. Predators with luminous eyes prowled unseen, their presence carried in rustles and distant howls. Few dared step into these woods after nightfall. But tonight, a flicker of fire burned low in its heart. A man sat by the flames, shoulders slumped in weariness. A human, stranded on this alien world for months. His ship had failed him, leaving him a wanderer, a survivor. Days blurred together in hunts for small game, in gathering bitter fruits, in coaxing sparks into fire. He had long grown accustomed to solitude, the silence of exile pressing on his thoughts like an invisible weight. Loneliness was his only companion. But fate does not honor routine. The sound came faint at first, a shuffle of steps, hesitant, delicate. The man's body tensed. Knife in hand, he scanned the undergrowth, expecting glowing eyes, the flash of teeth. Instead, two small figures stumbled forward, breaking into the circle of light. His breath stilled. They were children, but not just any. Even a wanderer had heard tales of the queen's daughters, the silver-eyed princesses. Yet here they stood, trembling, their fine garments smeared with mud, their delicate shoes torn by the forest. Fear etched their faces. The elder sister, shaking but defiant, placed herself between him and her younger sibling. "Don't come closer," she whispered, voice ringing like fragile bells. The man lowered his blade carefully, opening empty palms. His voice softened. "I will not hurt you." The younger girl's stomach betrayed her, growling with hunger. Her sister's eyes welled with tears she fought to hide. The human understood. Children needed food, not fear. Slowly he withdrew a strip of dried meat, a small piece of fruit, and laid them upon a stone beside the fire. Then he stepped back. For long moments the girls only stared, caught between instinct and desperation. At last the younger broke free of hesitation. She snatched the food, devouring quickly. Her sister scolded, but soon followed, hunger overpowering caution. Relief softened their faces as the firelight warmed them. The man studied them silently, thoughts heavy with consequence. He knew the queen's wrath would be merciless. If she discovered a human with her children, blame would fall upon him. Yet as he looked at them, fragile and lost, he felt a choice form within him. He could not turn them away. When the wind bit at their small forms, he shrugged off his coarse jacket, draping it gently across their shoulders. They hesitated, then accepted. Wrapped in its folds, they seemed even smaller, fragile as fledglings. The younger pressed against his chest without invitation, as though trust was instinct. The elder, though determined to appear strong, clung to his arm, whispering, "We must return. Mother will be angry." But her voice cracked, betraying fear. The man nodded. "We will find a way back," he murmured, though uncertainty gnawed at him. What would the queen do when she found them here, safe in the arms of a human? The fire dwindled lower, shadows pressing close. Strange cries echoed from deeper woods. Yet within the circle of faint light, the man felt the weight of two small heads resting upon him. Their breaths grew steady. First the younger drifted to sleep, curled against him. Then the elder surrendered, hand clutched to his sleeve as though she feared he would vanish. His heart, scarred by years of wandering, softened under the weight of such fragile trust. He gazed upward, through gaps in the canopy, to stars scattered like frozen sparks. "You are safe," he whispered, a promise to children who could not hear. Far away in her palace, the queen's rage still shook the earth, her armies scouring land and water. But she did not yet know the truth, that her daughters had not been stolen by force. They had chosen to step into the night. Fate had guided them to this moment, and now they slept upon the chest of a stranger, beyond her reach, safe for now in a bond that had just begun to form. The night that began with silence had turned into the night of vanishing daughters, and from this night forward, nothing in the galaxy would remain the same. The human closed his weary eyes, though his body refused the comfort of true rest. He did not know what the dawn would bring. All he knew, etched deep into his bones, was that when the morning light arrived, he would stand as a shield between these two fragile children and the vast, merciless world hunting them. No matter what the cost demanded of him, he had already chosen his path. The night whispered with secrets he could not yet read, and the endless stars overhead seemed to watch silently, as if recording a tale that would alter the shape of empires. The vanishing daughters of the alien throne had been found, not by armies, not by prophets, not even by their own queen, but by a lone human, whose steady heartbeat now carried the unbearable weight of an entire empire's grief and fury. Far away, within the stone and fire halls of the royal citadel, the very air quaked under the pressure of wrath. The alien queen, towering in her battle-worn armor, stood in the throne hall like an avenging spirit made flesh. Red fire lamps cast their harsh glow across her armor, making her seem less like a mother and more like a god of war awakened. Her fists were clenched so tight the claws cut against her palms, yet she felt nothing but the roaring ache of loss. Her voice, sharp as a blade drawn from its sheath, cracked across the chamber. The echo thundered until even the strongest soldiers dropped to their knees, trembling and unable to raise their eyes. Her daughters were gone. Still, despite all her armies, no one had brought them back. "You call yourselves warriors?" she roared, her voice carrying to the furthest arches of the hall. "Yet you could not guard two children." The generals, those who had bathed in blood and survived endless wars, bent lower until their foreheads brushed the cold floor. They knew that no excuse, no plea, no promise could spare them from the storm of a mother's fury. She was not merely a sovereign, she was a parent stripped of her most precious bond. That made her rage infinite. Scouts rushed in, knees knocking together as they reported what little they knew. They had searched the palace grounds, combed through the inner courtyards, investigated every gate and tower. No trace, no enemy ships had pierced the skies. No rebels had crept through the walls. It was as if the princesses had been swallowed whole by shadows. The queen's pride, sharp and unforgiving, did not allow her to collapse into grief. Instead, it transformed her fear into fire. "Search the villages! Scour the forests! Dredge the rivers!" she commanded, her voice echoing like thunder in the cavernous hall. "Bring me my daughters, or bring me the severed heads of those who dare to hide them." The order carried into the air like a curse. Soldiers snapped to attention, and already the tremor of marching boots rattled the ground outside. But beyond the walls, rumors grew faster than soldiers could run. Whispers twisted through markets and alleys like sparks on dry grass. Some swore rebels had dared to strike the heart of the empire. Others swore dark magics had lured the girls away, that ghosts of the old wars had risen to claim royal blood. Yet beneath all these tales, one name returned again and again: the human. A stranger had been seen wandering near the gates earlier. He bore no crest, no colors of any known house, his eyes bright and alien. To the people's frightened tongues, the human was transformed into a thief, a shadow, a villain in their stories. Fear made him guilty before truth could speak. The queen seized this rumor like a blade grasped by its hilt. Her eyes narrowed and her voice spat venom. "A human," she growled, every syllable dripping with contempt. She remembered the ancient tales told of humankind, fragile in body, yet cunning beyond measure, weak in flesh, yet dangerous in their unpredictability. If a human had touched her daughters, that creature would suffer in ways that even the stars themselves would weep to witness. At her order, her army expanded their search into a storm that devoured the land. Soldiers marched through villages, their banners striking terror into every soul. Homes were turned inside out, doors broken, families dragged into the streets for questioning. The sound of armor clashing filled once quiet roads. Dogs barked, children screamed, and the people bowed with trembling lips, praying mercy would descend before wrath consumed them. In her private chamber, far from the noise of boots and wails, the queen stood alone, the heavy crown pressed into her skull, the black of her armor reflecting no light. In her hand she clutched the smallest fragment left behind, her daughter's pendant, a charm woven from fine silver thread. It was a relic of innocence now drenched in sorrow. She pressed it against her breastplate, and for the barest heartbeat her steel mask cracked. Her breath came sharp and ragged, a mother's fear surfacing through the layers of war. Then, as if ashamed of weakness, she sealed it behind fury again. Her whisper was low, but it struck the stones like thunder. "Whoever has them will bleed." The walls themselves seemed to shiver with the curse. Advisors crept forward, voices shaking, begging her to temper her rage. "My queen, we must pause and think. Perhaps they are merely lost. Perhaps—" She silenced them with a glare so cutting they shrank back like children. "They are not lost. They are stolen," she declared, her voice booming like a war drum. "And if it is the human, he will suffer until eternity itself breaks." Thus began the great hunt. Dozens of warships roared into the skies, their searchlights carving across forests and rivers, their shadows stretching like blades across villages. Soldiers swarmed through caves and ruins, overturning every stone, chasing every whisper. Still no sign. The girls seemed hidden by fate itself, wrapped in a veil even the queen's power could not pierce. The absence only deepened her fury. In the throne room, sparks flew as she struck her blade against the floor. "I will tear this world apart, stone by stone," she cried. "I will not rest until my daughters breathe in my arms again." Yet beyond her reach, deep in the silent embrace of the crystalline forest, the human tended the children with quiet resolve. He gave them what scraps of food he could find, kept them close under his worn jacket, and calmed their cries when nightmares clawed at them. He knew the storm of the queen's wrath would soon descend, sweeping toward him like fire across a dry field. But abandoning them was unthinkable. Their small hands clutched him, as if he were the last light left in the universe. In their sleep they whispered for their mother, tiny voices choked with longing. The sound pierced him like no blade ever could. He wished with all his soul he could return them without fear, set them safely in the arms that missed them. But he understood too well. The queen's fury would not see him as savior. To her he would be a thief. The palace balcony bore witness to her sleepless oath. As dawn cracked, she gazed across her empire, her eyes rimmed with fire. "By blood and by flame, by war and by storm, I will find them," she swore. Her people trembled below, bowing as if before a goddess of vengeance. The human, unaware of her vow, held the girls closer as sunlight slipped through the canopy. He did not know that the full storm of her rage was already marching toward him. Soon the galaxy itself would tremble between two hearts, one burning with fury, the other burning with care. The forest glowed as dawn rose, twin suns spilling golden light through crystal branches. Embers smoldered where the fire had been, and the human woke to the soft weight of two small bodies pressed against him. The princesses breathed evenly, their faces calm despite the horrors behind them. He watched, marveling how beings so delicate could belong to a queen whose very name terrified the stars. Their fingers clutched at his jacket even in dreams, refusing to let go. It struck him with wonder and sorrow. They trusted a stranger more than the fortress they had left behind. When they stirred awake, the elder princess scanned the trees with cautious eyes. "Mother will be looking for us," she whispered, her voice torn between fear and desperate hope. The younger yawned, rubbing her eyes, and asked instead, "Do you have more food?" Her innocence tugged a rare smile from him. He offered them fruit he had gathered the day before. The younger ate greedily, giggling, while the older hesitated, always watching the forest, expecting armored soldiers to burst from the shadows. The human, understanding the weight of fear in a child, tried to soften the edges. He picked up a stick and traced shapes into the dirt, strange symbols from his forgotten home. "What is that?" the little one asked, eyes wide. "A game from Earth," he explained. "You connect the dots and the pictures come alive." Their laughter, soft and shy, filled the forest like sunlight piercing shadows. Later he sang an old Earth lullaby, rough but tender. Its rhythm soothed them, foreign yet comforting. The younger clapped her hands while the elder whispered, "We never heard songs like that." He smiled gently. "On my world we sing to keep the dark away." Trust blossomed. The girls no longer saw him as stranger, but as protector. Night after night they refused to sleep apart, curling against his chest for warmth. He wrapped them in his arms, feeling for the first time in years that he mattered to someone. He showed them small lessons, how to spark fire from stone, how to whistle with reeds, how to drink safely from hidden springs. Their laughter grew braver, floating through the forest like a secret hymn, yet cracks showed in the elder's courage. One night her voice wavered as she whispered, "Mother is strong, but she frightens us." She yells. She commands. She never holds us when we cry. Tears filled her eyes before she turned away. The human said nothing, only placed a hand gently on her shoulder. "You are safe now." The younger, too small to hide her feelings, threw her arms around him, giggling, calling him warm human. Her joy softened corners of his heart, long hardened by loneliness. He thought of the family he had lost long ago, and for the first time the emptiness within him began to heal. Far away, the Queen's wrath burned brighter, consuming her lands. Armies marched endlessly. Torches blazed through the night. Yet here, under the canopy of crystal branches, a truth unfolded the Queen could never imagine. Her daughters were not crying in fear. They were smiling, held gently in the arms of a human. It was irony the universe itself seemed to savor, but he feared the moment soldiers would appear. He knew her wrath would not see innocence. He had promised these children safety without words, and that vow bound his soul tighter than any chain. One evening, as suns dipped below the horizon, the elder asked softly, "Will you leave us when the soldiers come?" The question pierced him. He shook his head slowly. "No, I will not leave." Her tears glistened, but she smiled, truly smiled for the first time. The bond was sealed not by blood, not by crowns, but by kindness in the heart of a wild forest. A human and two alien children had woven something fragile yet unbreakable. Night fell again. The girls clung to him, their breath soft against his chest. He gazed at the stars above the canopy, wondering if the Queen glared at the same sky, burning with fury. He wondered how their paths would collide, her storm of wrath against the bond now forged. For now silence reigned. The forest was their shelter, the night their secret. And the human knew with every beat of his heart that he would not let them go. But silence does not last forever. Fate does not hide royal blood for long. One morning, as dawn lit the trees, the earth trembled. Armored boots shook the ground, war banners cut through the crystal canopy, and the hunt had arrived. The human awoke in an instant, his senses sharpened like blades. His first movement was instinctive. He pulled the girls behind him, his body shielding them. The older girl clutched desperately at his arm, her fingers digging in, her trembling voice barely above a whisper. "They are coming." The younger one buried her tear-streaked face into the worn fabric of his jacket, her words choked with fear. "I hear them. They're here." The forest around them vibrated with the metallic cadence of armored footsteps. The human's pulse thundered in his ears, each beat echoing the inevitability of what was about to unfold. He had dreaded this very moment from the night he had found them, and now destiny had arrived to collect its due. Shadows lengthened, and within minutes the clearing was encircled. Dozens upon dozens of alien soldiers emerged from the trees, their armor glinting with an unholy glow, their weapons raised and steady, their eyes like burning coals fixed on the solitary man who stood defiantly between them and the children. And at their head, taller than all, her presence eclipsing every other figure, came the Queen. Her armor blazed under the filtered sunlight, polished plates burning as though forged from fire itself. She stood as a living tempest, unbending, furious, magnificent. The princesses gasped together, small hands clinging to the human's sleeve as if it were their lifeline. The Queen's gaze swept across the scene like a blade. She saw the man, the modest fire still glowing, her children wrapped in his jacket as though they belonged there. Her heart clenched painfully at the sight, but her pride smothered the softness, twisting it into fury. Her voice erupted like thunder. "Human!" The word cracked the silence and rattled the earth beneath their feet. "You dare lay hands upon what is mine!" At once her soldiers lifted their blades, poised for her signal, the clearing bristling with lethal intent. The man did not move, though his knees begged to collapse. He had faced hunger, storms, and the agony of loneliness, but never had he endured the wrath of a queen. And then, unexpectedly, the younger princess broke from his side. With a cry, she dashed forward, wrapping her small arms tightly around his leg. "Don't hurt him," she pleaded, her voice piercing the air like a bell of innocence. The elder girl ran after her, planting herself before the human, spreading her slender arms as if her fragile frame could stand against an army. Her chest rose and fell in defiance, her eyes locked on her mother. The forest held its breath. Soldiers froze mid-motion, their armor creaking as they hesitated. For a heartbeat, even the Queen faltered. Her daughters were not crying for her embrace. They were defending him, their fragile bodies pressed to him as though he were their home. Confusion split the Queen's heart. She had torn villages apart, scoured the world, and crossed rivers of blood to find them. Yet here they stood, clinging to a human rather than to their own blood. "Come to me," Her voice, though still commanding, had dipped lower, fractured with something unspoken. But the girls remained. The elder shook her head firmly, eyes blazing. "He kept us safe," she declared. "He gave us food and warmth, and he held us when we cried." The queen's breath caught. Her claws dug cruelly into her palm until blood welled. Soldiers murmured uneasily, stealing glances at one another. Never had they seen the princesses defy their mother. The human still had not spoken, though his chest rose and fell with measured calm. He knew a single misstep in word or gesture would bring his death. Yet when the queen strode forward, her towering shadow engulfing them, her voice hissing like steel, "You dare claim my daughters?" The man finally answered. His voice was steady, quiet yet strong enough to carry across the clearing. "I claim nothing. I protected them. They were lost, hungry and cold. I gave only what I had to give, every sound stilled." Even the forest seemed to bow into silence. The soldiers stiffened, fingers tightening on their weapons, awaiting the command to spill his blood. But before the order could fall, the princesses cried out in unison, "No!" Their voices rang louder than any blade drawn. The younger clung tighter, sobbing into his jacket, while the elder spread her arms wider, her tears unashamed, her courage unbroken. The queen's fury collided with the fragile yet unyielding shield of their love. She saw terror in their faces, not of her enemies, not of her soldiers, but of losing him. And she saw in their clinging arms something she had never given, gentleness. She had provided them armies for protection, her name for power, but never the softness of an embrace, never the quiet warmth of comfort. "Step away from him," she commanded again, her voice splintering with cracks she could not hide. The elder girl's tears shimmered as she whispered, "If you hurt him, you hurt us too." Her hands trembled, but she stood like a wall of light before him. The man straightened then, his hand resting protectively on their small heads. He looked the queen squarely in the eyes, unflinching before her fire. "If someone must pay," he said firmly, "let it be me. But do not shatter the small peace they have found." The silence that followed was suffocating. Even the trees seemed bent under the weight of decision. Soldiers shifted restlessly, their faith in her command shaken by hesitation they had never before witnessed. Her pride demanded the man's death. But her heart broke in ways she had never allowed. Was it safer for them in her embrace or in his? She did not know. Her chest heaved, her blade lifted, the world froze. The girls shrieked in terror, clinging to him as if their cries could stop the storm. Yet the man did not flinch. He stood like a fortress, ready to be cut down if that was the price. In that suspended instant, all existence seemed to watch. The forest, the soldiers, perhaps the stars themselves. Destiny itself held its breath. Would this moment end in blood, or ignite something far greater? The clearing remained trapped in a silence heavy as iron. Soldiers gripped their weapons but did not strike. The twin suns climbed higher, their rays spilling over polished steel and trembling leaves. The queen's blade gleamed menacingly, leveled at the human's chest. The princesses would not move. Their small bodies pressed to him like roots clinging to stone, tears soaking into his jacket. The younger whispered through sobs again and again, "Don't hurt him. Don't hurt him." The elder met her mother's eyes with defiance beyond her years. The man's heart roared in his chest, but his voice was calm as he lowered his hand reassuringly over the girl's shoulders. "I found them lost. I gave them warmth. That is all." A ripple of shock stirred the ranks. Never before had a human spoken so boldly to their sovereign. Yet he pressed on, lifting his chin, his voice cutting clean through the charged air. "If you believe I wronged you, take my life, but do not break theirs. They have suffered enough." His words fell like arrows in the queen's chest. Her grip on her weapon tightened. She longed to silence him, to reclaim her daughters and burn this insult into dust. But when her gaze met his, she faltered. His eyes were not filled with arrogance or challenge. They held only truth, plain, raw, undeniable. The elder princess took a step closer, clutching his hand. Her voice quivered but held steady. "Mother, he is not a thief. He is not our enemy. He saved us when no one else came." The younger whispered, "He kept us warm." The queen inhaled sharply. She had conquered worlds, broken armies, humbled kings. Yet two tiny voices now shook her more deeply than all her wars, and the man's stillness, his refusal to flee or kneel, stirred a sensation she could not name. Her soldiers shifted uneasily. The silence had stretched too long. Some lowered their weapons ever so slightly, a seed of doubt planted in hearts that had never known hesitation. The human's voice broke the stillness once more, calm, but carrying far. I know what you believe of humans, that we are weak, treacherous, unworthy. But I did not seek them. They came to me hungry, cold. Any heart, even one hardened, would not turn them away. The queen's pride screamed for blood. But in her heart, something else warred. Something stronger than rage. The queen's pride was a fortress of iron, but her daughter's tears broke through like arrows. Each sob etched wounds deeper than any blade. She advanced slowly, her towering form blotting out the firelight, her shadow stretching over the human like a mantle of doom. Her voice was low, edged with danger. You stand before me knowing one command could end you. Yet you do not falter. The man's reply was steady, though his heart thundered. Inside I tremble, but they need me strong, so I stand. The words struck her harder than steel. Her weapon dipped just slightly, her eyes falling upon the wide, pleading gaze of her daughters. For the first time she did not see heirs to a throne or jewels of her empire. She saw children. Children desperate for safety, who had found it in the arms of the one she had sworn to despise. Memories stirred within her, buried under years of war and iron duty. She recalled being young herself, before crowns, before armies, when once long ago she too had been held against a kind embrace. Her jaw tightened, pride clashing with a heart that dared to awaken. The forest stood still. Soldiers held their breath, awaiting her verdict. The human did not flinch, though death coiled around him. His courage was not the absence of fear, but the defiance of it. He would rather die in her wrath than let the girls face it alone. Her blade lowered another inch. "Why?" she asked at last, her voice quieter, though still dangerous. "Why risk your life for children who are not yours?" He glanced at the girls pressed close to his side. Their small faces lifted to him, trusting, fragile yet unyielding. Then he met her gaze. "Because they are children. Because they needed someone. And because no one else came." The words cracked through her pride like lightning through stone. She saw not only the man's defiance, but the reflection of innocence, her daughter's innocence, shining in him. And she remembered something she had forgotten. True strength was not always in domination, but in compassion. The air shifted. Soldiers no longer looked at the man as prey, but as something else, something even their queen hesitated to destroy. The girls clung tighter, their tiny hands grasping his sleeve as if letting go meant death. The queen's pride still burned, but her blade sank lower. The choice no longer a duel of weapons, but a reckoning of hearts. The clearing remained locked in silence, time suspended on a single decision. The queen's soldiers, usually unwavering, hesitated, their weapons drooping ever so slightly. The man wrapped his arms protectively around the children, their wet cheeks pressed against his chest. Her eyes, those burning twin suns, narrowed in conflict. She had ruled with fear, built her empire on blood and steel. Yet here her daughters stood, shielding a wanderer with their small frames, choosing him over her. The elder girl broke the silence, her voice trembling. "Mother, please don't harm him. He kept us safe when no one else did." The younger sobbed into his jacket. "He is warm. He is kind." Those words speared her heart like no weapon could. She thought of the nights she had defended them with battalions, of the battles fought to protect her empire, of the terror her own voice often inspired. Yet they had never clung to her as they did now to him. The man's voice followed, calm though shadowed by death. "I am not your enemy. I never sought to stand against you. But they needed me, and I could not abandon them. If my life is the price for their safety, so be it. I will not resist." Gasps rippled through the army ranks. No human had ever dared speak with such calm to their queen. Even the forest seemed to hold its breath. Her grip on the weapon trembled. Pride screamed for blood. But her daughters' trembling voices demanded mercy. The elder whispered, "If you hurt him, you hurt us too." The words struck her like a spear to the soul. What would her power mean if it shattered her daughter's trust? What was the worth of a throne if the hearts she ruled closest turned away? Painfully, slowly, she lowered her blade. The metallic scrape of restraint shocked her soldiers. Not once in memory had their queen stayed her hand. Her voice carried steadier than her heart. "You are bold, human, perhaps too bold. But you achieved what all my legions failed. You kept them safe. The man inclined his head but did not release the girls. His resolve stood unbroken. The princesses gazed at their mother, uncertain. For the first time her eyes softened. She saw love in their faces, love freely given to the wanderer who had offered them warmth, not armies. For the first time in her reign, she set her weapon aside. Her voice carried across the clearing, firm yet transformed. "The human will not be punished," she declared. "He will be honored, for he gave what an empire could not: warmth, protection, care." Murmurs rose like wind among the ranks. The forest itself seemed to exhale in relief. Tears glittered on the girls' faces as they rushed into their mother's arms. Yet even in her embrace, their eyes lingered on him, their bond unbroken. The queen lifted her clawed hand, resting it on the man's shoulder. Her grip was firm, not cruel. "You are unlike your kind, human. For this I will remember you." The man's reply was quiet, steady. "I only did what was right." Her gaze shifted to her daughters. Pride bent but did not break. She understood something long hidden, that strength was not only in power but in mercy. Her empire had feared her for generations. Yet tonight her daughters had taught her what fear never could. As her army dispersed, whispers spread. That the queen who had broken worlds had stayed her wrath for a human. That the fiercest ruler in the stars had yielded to compassion. And that night, under the watching stars, the princesses nestled once more against the wanderer's chest, their breathing soft, their peace restored. The queen stood close, her eyes no longer filled with rage but with quiet understanding. The galaxy would remember. The day an alien queen chose mercy over vengeance. The day her daughters found safety, not in the might of armies but in the arms of a human. And the day a lonely wanderer became the protector of royal hearts.